A woman named Jenna hopped in an Uber on a late Friday afternoon. She was heading to the airport and was going to fly on a plane for the very first time. She had always been nervous about flying. She had heard horror stories about heavy turbulence and watched YouTube videos of unruly passengers getting loud with the flight attendants. Jenna drove for most of her business trips, but this particular trip was across the country, and she had to be back on Monday to present her report to her boss. Determined to face her fears head-on, Jenna confidently checked in at the ticket counter, breezed through security, and grabbed a caramel macchiato. Before she reached her gate, she bought a souvenir squishy doll, similar to the ones she used to ask for as a kid. It made her feel calm and safe, and would be a cute companion for the flight. Now at her gate, she felt like an experienced traveler, but as she boarded the plane, she couldn't shake the intense feeling that something bad was going to happen. She walked through the small door to enter the plane with a knot in her stomach and her heart pounding in her chest. Jenna sat in the window seat 15C. She took a deep breath and stared out of the window. The grounds crew moved frantically, back and forth like worker ants. Anxiety started to settle in, and Jenna suddenly noticed every button above her and light below her. The red no smoking sign and the flashing icon to buckle the seatbelts were making her palms sweaty. Her ears were catching every noise, from the engine spooling up to the click of the wing flaps being tested by the pilot. Over the loudspeaker, the flight attendant loudly gave directions, and she paced back and forth down the aisle. The college student next to Jenna reeked of a cheap body spray cologne, the stench adding to Jenna's already upset stomach. She knew she had to try and calm down. Jenna put on her AirPods and started listening to a relaxing Zen playlist. She gently tucked her squishy in the seat pocket in front of her, sticking out just enough to keep an eye on it. She then closed her eyes, leaned back in her seat, and before she knew it, she was asleep. Suddenly, Jenna was jolted awake by a loud booming sound. She opened her eyes and she saw a bright yellow oxygen mask dangling down in front of each seat, swinging back and forth. The plane was shaking violently, and there was a loud sound of metal-to-metal grinding behind her. She could see the panic on the faces of the other passengers, and the flight attendants were running up and down the aisles, trying to calm everybody down. Jenna could feel her heart racing as she realized that something was very, very wrong. In the corner of her eye, red-hot sparks and flames were dancing in the wind. When she looked out of the window, the engine on her side of the plane was blown to pieces and engulfed in flames. Everyone was screaming. Some passengers were frantically dialing on their phones while others bowed their heads in prayer. A shaky voice from the captain yelled over the loudspeaker, announcing the engine trouble. The captain then prepared the flight crew for an immediate emergency landing. The flight crew strapped on their life vests and attempted to shout over the screaming passengers to remain calm and follow their instructions. Their attempts proved futile. When a second explosion blew the emergency door off the side of the plane, absolute panic ensued. Jenna could feel tears and sweat pouring down her face as she tried to make sense of what was happening. She couldn't believe that her first flight would possibly be her last. She could hear people crying and screaming and the wind rushing through the emergency door hole, but she couldn't move. She was frozen in fear. The plane started to descend rapidly. The sound of the nose of the plane splitting the air whooshed loudly through the airplane cabin. Jenna could feel the captain's valiant attempt to level out the plane for the emergency landing. The whirl of the landing gear being deployed gave the flight crew and Jenna a moment of relief amongst the pandemonium. The second engine worked overtime to keep the plane in the air as the captain made his maneuvers. A moment later, a second detonation exploded the right side engine, and the plane began to free-fall spin, hurling towards the ground. Jenna could feel the pressure building in her ears and the hope leaving her spirit. She closed her eyes and prayed that everything would be all right. She didn't know how much longer she could take it. Jenna could see the signs on the buildings below as she looked out of the window, and then she heard the captain beg everyone to brace for impact. The cause of the crash was never determined. Aviation authorities investigated the wreckage for months. While collecting evidence for their investigation, authorities found a partially burned squishy buried in the rubble. They were never able to link the squishy to a particular passenger. Recently, the crash site was memorialized and will always be a chilling reminder of a first flight gone terribly wrong.